I'm here today with author Shannon Sue Dunlap, and I'm excited to talk to her. She's a new person for me. Some of these people that I have been interviewing, I know from other places and other times, but Shannon is brand new. So I'm excited to get to know you, Shannon. And I know our listeners are going to be excited to get to know you too, because I think just from our little conversation we've had before we started today, you have got some interesting background. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself so people know who you are?
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Shannon. And the ones who've known me since I was a little girl maybe call me Shannon Sue. So I kind of like the idea of using that name as my author name because I know the people that call me Shannon Sue love me. They've known me
Oh,
since I was little. So I'd love to have that kind of relationship with my readers too. It's like family. But
absolutely.
I grew up in the beautiful state of Virginia and I was a PK, a pastor's kid.
Oh,
And
I did not know that.
yes, I was, but I was a well-behaved one for the most part.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated, I went to a small Christian college in the St. Louis area and then came back home to Virginia for a while and went to Regent University there. And when I got done with Regent, I spent a little bit of time living in Africa and I taught in a school there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there would be so many stories I could tell just from that part of my life alone, even though it was only one school year. But that was a blessing to be able to spend that school year in Botswana, Africa. And I'm still connected with a few people on Facebook from all those years ago.
That's pretty awesome.
Now I live in Houston, Texas. It is hot and humid outside, even
Mm,
though it's nearing the end of September. And I teach pre-K 3 through second grade music class.
okay, I want to touch on that for a minute here.
Hmm.
What, give us a typical idea of what a music lesson you would be doing with kids that young.
Hmm. Well, for example, the pre-K 3 today, we were doing a lesson about how music goes high and low, and also about the magic words please and thank you. And so I did some songs with them, and I had a coloring time with them, and we practiced please and thank you when I was passing out the crayons. Some of them were better at it than others, but they did try. And then first grade and second grade, you can do harder things with. We were working on meter and pitch, I believe, with those older kids. And one of my favorite things to do with the age groups is at Christmas time when we put on the
Mm,
big production, and I'm blessed to be at a school that lets us practice every day. So they'll
yeah.
bring the kids in every day and they'll practice and they'll practice so they have it good by the time the parents get there. And it's a huge deal at our school. And it gives
Wow.
me lots of fodder for future stories too,
I'll
because the
bet.
kids are so stinking cute.
I'll bet. I'll bet. So I'm assuming then you sing.
Yes, I do. It might be a matter of opinion, but yes, I do.
And you
I
must
don't
play,
consider myself a recording artist.
but still, I mean, even to be able to, I mean, I can't carry a tune in a bucket. I love to sing, but I try to do it in private. And then the music playing. So are you playing, you play instruments?
I do play the piano, but I've never been all that fond of it, doing it, say, in a
Mm,
service or something.
right.
But I was actually playing a little bit yesterday just to warm the kids up. We started a new thing, which was exciting. I work in a charter school. It's not a Christian school, but we have an after school thing we just started, worship choir with the kids.
Oh,
And so I was
nice.
warming them up, playing on the piano, and they were singing a song. And it was such a blessing today to get a text saying that one of the mothers, when she dropped her kid off, had said that her child was singing worship music like all last night and then in the morning too. And it made her so happy. She was just like in tears when she was telling this
Oh,
person.
that's amazing. My
Yeah.
grandpa was a piano player, and I have a keyboard up in my little hobby room that I plunk along with John
Mhm.
Thompson.
Oh, yes, I did John Thompson, the Red Books.
Yeah, I'm maybe too old to learn. I don't know, but my grandpa he played. There was a well-known bar in
Hmm.
the Bay Area called the Pleasanton Hotel in Pleasanton, California, and he was their piano man.
You must
Between
have been
there,
good.
he was good, and he never learned how to read music. He could hear a song once,
Ah.
play it. He was incredible. So
Hmm.
my growing up with, every holiday, Grandpa played the piano. We'd all gather around and we'd sing, and it was one of those kind of
Oh.
hallmark type of things that you
Yes.
think is not real. It was real in our family, but
Mm.
anyway, I wish I could play piano. I'm trying, but so you obviously teach, and now you're writing. So how long
Mhm.
have you been writing? And where did that come from? Where did that start for you?
I finished studying music in St. Louis. I had spent 4 years doing that and didn't really want to do that as a career. It was like, well, what could I do then? And someone told me about Regent and how they would accept my degree, but I could go into a different program. And so I ended up studying journalism there and got a master's degree in journalism, but it was with an emphasis in creative writing. I really did want to do creative writing in books.
Right.
And it just led to that. And for several years, I wrote for a local arts paper. I got to do theater reviews and get free concert tickets and tell everybody what I thought of it and then get paid for it. That was wonderful as
Nice.
a contributing writer for that paper. And I would write short things like devotions and such that might be published. But I had such a hard time with the book and trying to get a book published, and you go to the conference, and you have your proposal, and I really struggled in that aspect. So when I moved to Houston, I don't want to say I gave it up, because I didn't make a mental thought in my head that, oh, I'm not going to be a writer anymore. I still considered myself a writer, but I got busy with other things.
Right.
And when I moved to Houston and started teaching full time, it went on the back burner and I didn't really think about it for the space of several years. And then God led me back to it, oh so gently. And
Mm,
now here I am doing it again.
there you are. And I looked at your website, Shannon, and you have, so I saw 3 books on there, and we're going to talk about some of this because the first book you had was, I believe, was The Flower Boy Tour Guide. The
Yes.
second book is The Reality Show Romance.
Hmm.
And Decoy Valentine is the one we're going to kind of talk about a little bit more today. But there's something very interesting about each of your books, and I want you to share what that is. I'm assuming you know what it is. That's a little different than your mainstream, what writers come up with these days.
Well, I really hope that each one of my books, the first two, the novella and the novel, they weren't Christian books per se, but they still had a message of hope and encouragement. And even though I might not have preached a sermon in it or mentioned God, he was still there,
Right.
because just as he's a part of me, he's a part of every story that I write.
Well, think
And
of the
then when
book of Esther. I mean, Esther, the book of Esther doesn't have mentioned God one time.
That's true.
And it's the
Yes.
Bible.
Good point.
Yeah,
Hmm. But he's there through
he's
the whole
there.
story. Hmm. And another thing I really like to tie all of the books together, which I feel like God has gifted me with, is that I'm able to create stories that make people laugh. And each one of the books really has a common thread of humor that ties them together. And the Bible says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. So
Hmm.
when I see reviews on Amazon where someone says, this made me laugh out loud, it gives me a sense of pride that almost like I gave somebody some medicine, because our world can be hard to live in these days and
We need
we need
laughter.
reasons to laugh.
We need laughter. Now,
Mhm.
maybe I misunderstood this. When I was looking at your books, it seemed to me, and I read on your website that you have a deep love for South Korea.
I do actually.
And that
Yes, that
came
is
from
something else.
watching dramas. You watching
Hmm.
dramas, right? You've never been there?
I have been there
Or you have?
actually.
Okay.
Yes, I visited. So it wasn't a long trip, but a friend had recommended a Korean drama to me. I didn't mind reading subtitles, so I gave it a try and I loved it. And it's a deep hole once you fall into
Oh, is
it.
it?
Yes, because there's so many interesting stories and they're different from American stories, and they're not afraid to be very romantic and funny and sappy, whereas I feel like our TV shows, not all of them, but they can tend to be very jaded and
Right.
hard.
Yeah.
And another thing I really loved about them was that mm, most of them anyway, are very concise. They're like 16 episodes and done.
Right.
So you don't have to give up 10 years of your life watching a series that goes on and on until they've killed off every original character you ever loved, and you're sitting there weeping. You're like, why did they do that?
Yeah, changes the show completely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have a bite-sized romance or a bite-sized comedy that you can just enjoy and it lifts up your spirits, and then you can move on.
And are you now your aren't your heroes, I would guess, your heroes in your
Yes.
stories, they are Korean, correct?
Yes.
All
And
four
all those
books.
books I wrote, they
Now,
are.
and
Yes.
the setting, where's the setting for those books?
Actually, the first two were set mostly in Korea. But
Okay.
the Christian inspirational one actually involved a hero who was adopted when he was young from Korea, and it took place in a small town in Texas.
Okay, perfect. So, you shared some exciting news with me just before we got on here. Why don't you share that and how it kind of came about? As it seems like I would say serendipitous. Maybe we would say it was a God
Yes,
thing.
it definitely was a God thing. I recently went to a writers' conference and I had the pleasure of rooming with somebody who is an established author. She's written over 100 books. And another friend was also there who's written over 100 books. And they
Wow.
happened to be out one night. Yes, how do they find the time? But they were out one night when I was not with them, and they met an editor of a small traditional press, and she was looking for stories. So they suggested mine. And since she already knew about me, I messaged her on Facebook to kind of introduce myself and say, oh, I sent you a proposal. But actually, I guess I should go back a little further, because the day I sent her the proposal, it was a Sunday.
Okay.
And that Sunday morning, I got a response back from an agent that I had given a proposal to, an agency. And it was a let's just say rejection, even though they don't mean it that way, but it's a
Yeah.
rejection. And I think
Right.
she said that she didn't connect with the story. And even after you've gotten however many dozens or hundreds, I don't know, of rejections, it's still not pleasant.
No, it's not.
And when I first started writing years and years ago, I used to save them. Now, that was back in the day of the SACE. Do you remember that, self-addressed
Oh
stamped
yeah, I
envelope?
do.
You
Yeah.
used to have to send your
You had
own
to pay to get
postage.
rejected.
Exactly. So you'd get your own handwriting back in the mail and just kind of hold your breath like, oh no, is this going to be an acceptance or a rejection? But they don't do that anymore. It's just by email. And I used to
Right.
save the rejection slips, but after a while, you're just like, I don't feel like printing out my own rejection slips too, once they came
Right.
from email. So I just gave up on saving them. And anyway, I got another one back on that Sunday morning, and I could have just curled up in a ball and cried and been like, it's been how many years? I'm never gonna make it. This is never gonna happen. Because even though there is definite worth in being indie published, and I respect the people that do that, and I've done it as well, I want to be traditionally published as
I
well.
understand that. I'm right there with you.
Hmm.
Right there with you.
So I just decided to keep going, and I sent a proposal off, not for the same story, but for something else, to that traditional publisher. I sent her that on Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon.
The
And by
same day
seven,
you just got rejected.
yes, I got
Okay.
rejected that morning. That afternoon, I sent off my proposal. And by that evening, the editor had looked at it and she liked it and wanted to see the full manuscript. And so I sent that off to her, and I believe it was 2 days later, I got the email that she wanted to publish it.
And that is exciting. And you told me earlier that's
Very.
a sequel to, so the book we have here is Decoy Valentine, and this is
Hmm.
a sequel to that. So how did these
Yes.
two books tie in together?
Actually, I don't think, even though it's a romance, I don't think I started with the romance idea. There were these hilarious side characters in the small town I'd created. And one of them is the bossy mayor's wife with her fingers in every job in the town, but who loves the town and has a very good heart. And it just occurred to me one day, I don't even know what made me think of the idea. What if Lynette got upset at her husband, the mayor, and decided to run against him? And
Oh,
then the story just kind of snowballed from there. She got the local crusading big mouth girl, to be her campaign manager. And then the mayor has to have a campaign manager too. So he imports the big city guy to come in and be the campaign manager from him. But since the mayor and his wife are married, they have all the same assets. So they end up having both their campaign managers share the same office. So it was a very fun story to write with all of the close quarters and banter that goes on in
Um,
it.
but you must have done quite a bit of research in order for it to be, you think about it being political, and even though it's a small town, you
I
still have
had to
all
look
the
up some
political.
stuff. Yes.
Yeah. So was that hard for you? Did you talk to a
Mm,
mayor, or were you able to
I
do it
did
all?
not talk to a mayor. There was one aspect of the book I researched, which I don't want to say because it would kind of give something away. But then there was something else I researched about having to have a certain number of local voters sign off in order for the candidate to
Like a
be
petition?
legitimate and turn it into the city clerk. And the girl in the story, Catherine, didn't know that. And the other guy was hiding it from her. And that caused a
Oh.
whole situation too. And so, yes, there was definitely research that had to go on. But for some reason, I kind of like research. I think I always have, even when I was younger and having to write papers in school.
I don't mind it, but you do find if you get even one thing wrong, somebody's going to call you on it.
Oh,
They're going to
right.
call you on it. And so I keep track of my research, because what I found one time as I wrote a book, and it was the first book I had come out, and it was a teacher going through this intern program and all this. And one of the people, actually, she was on my street team, and she's like, well, I know I was a teacher and you can't do it that way. And that's not realistic. And so I'm like, okay, I was a teacher too, and I did all the research. I'm like, so I gave her some stuff back, and she goes, oh wow, they've changed things since I was a teacher. Like, she's in her 60s. So she's like, then I felt like, okay, phew. Because you do the research and you think you've got it right. Well, you better hang on,
Right.
because you want to make sure if somebody's going to call you on it, you want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row.
Well, now you make me want to create a whole new folder on my computer just so that I can
It
have it
doesn't
all
hurt.
saved just
Sometimes
in
you want to go
case.
back and look at it anyway, so it's probably not a bad idea.
Mhm.
So your book that you have just gotten an acceptance on, do you have a title for that one?
Right now, it's called Lone Star Sweetheart.
Lone
I'm
Star
not
Kent.
sure if it's going to stay that or not, but we'll see.
Well, a lot of the small publishing houses, they don't change your title, not like the big
Mm.
ones do. I like
To
that
be
title.
Thank you. To be honest, that wasn't my favorite. I had several options, but I put up a poll. I don't remember if it was in my reader newsletter or Facebook. Maybe I did both. And I asked which ones people preferred, and that one was ahead
Well, what
by a
was your
lot, I
favorite one?
believe.
What was your favorite one?
I would prefer something like the flirtation campaign.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, but
Huh. Okay.
I don't
Well,
know. We'll
so
see.
these are sequels. Are you going to use, is this going to be a series then? Are you going to have a series title for these when you redo all this?
The town's name is Sweetheart, Texas. It's not a real town, although there are other towns in Texas that have odd names like Bacon, Texas and Ding Dong, Texas.
Those are real names?
I believe so, if my research is right.
Funny.
But
Okay.
I would probably call it the Sweetheart series since it's set in Sweetheart, Texas.
Oh, that's a good name. Let's see. So, tell us about your family, Shannon, because I know you kind of shared a little bit of stuff with me that's been hard for you recently.
Mm. Well, I have two very awesome parents, my mom and my dad. I was raised an only child, so I was definitely loved a lot, probably spoiled a little too.
Nothing wrong with
And it was nice. I enjoyed it. But in the past few years, my mom has struggled with Parkinson's disease, which has also been added to with dementia. And
that.
it's
Mhm.
been such a battle for her. And that has been a way to draw all of us closer to God, I guess you could say, because I think we all have leaned on him more than in our entire lives. Even though my dad was a minister when I was growing up and he pastored a church, when you go through a loved one with a very serious illness, it just either people will run to God or they will
Mhm.
run from him.
Absolutely.
And I'm thankful to say that all of us, my dad, my mom, and me, we just run to him and we just throw ourselves at his feet and trust that he's going to take care of us. There was in January, especially, was an especially hard time because all three of us had COVID.
Oh no.
And my father was in the hospital. I couldn't go see him. I had COVID, and my mom had Parkinson's and COVID. And some other loving family, my aunt and my uncle, actually drove in from out of state to help take care of me and my mom, even though they are older as well. And I don't believe either of them had ever had COVID, but they just came anyway to
Oh,
come and take care of family. And
only does.
thank God we all made it. And I
Yeah.
don't think my aunt and uncle caught it either. So that's another thing that I'm very thankful for.
It's an odd sickness, that's for sure. So yeah,
Yes.
my mom was sick with leukemia for years, and it was a real hard thing, and she passed away at the end of it. So it's a real hard thing to go through that, and and you were raised basically in Virginia, right?
Yes.
And so is
Beautiful Virginia.
your mom and dad are in Texas, and did they come out to be with you, or are they with you in Texas?
Yes, they moved out here. I think it was less than a year after I moved out here. There's actually kind of an interesting story for how I got here because I was not doing the writing thing much in Virginia either. I guess I was writing, but I was also my full-time job was as an administrative assistant for a Department of Health office. And I don't want to say I was wasting my life, but I wasn't very challenged.
Right,
And
right. You weren't using
it,
your giftings.
yes, and it wasn't very, my space wasn't very creative either. So I feel like it didn't feed into my creativity very much. But when you get comfortable, sometimes it gets hard to get out of that rut.
Right.
And I was at the office one day. There was another secretary who would sit right in the desk next to me, but for some reason, probably a God reason, she happened not to be there that day. And I was there all alone in that part of the office, and I woke up on the floor with no memory of how I got there.
At work.
Yes, at work. I
Oh
had
my
passed
God.
out. It was a hard kind of tile floor, but I wasn't even in any pain as if I'd hit my head or something. I do not know how I passed out on the floor. I actually felt pretty comfortable, like I was taking a nap. It's like, oh, I wish I could
Wow.
sleep longer. Wait, why am I on the floor?
Oh, how odd.
Yes, and I went to the doctor, of course, to get it checked out, and there didn't seem to be any reason. But what I didn't realize, I don't know if it's just in Virginia or everywhere that it's like this, when you pass out and there's no particular reason for it, they take your driver's license away
Yeah.
for 6 months.
Yeah. They're afraid you have seizures.
And so it didn't matter how many tests I got that I was like, see, the scan says I'm all right, or this says I'm all right. It didn't matter. So I was a grown adult having to be driven to work by my father every day.
Mhm.
And so at the end of that time, I believe it was since it had been a few weeks from the doctor, I probably went about a little over 5 months without driving. By the time that was over, I was ready for something new.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And I had a friend in Texas who had been after me for a few years, I guess, saying, you should come and teach for me. You should come and teach for me. And I would always be like, no, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. But after that, I emailed her, I believe, saying, I'm ready to talk about it now. And I think that that was God's way of just pushing me out of the nest, so to
Yeah.
speak, and getting me where I needed to be.
Well, and using your giftings. I mean, it's parent,
Yes.
you're gifted, whether you like to play piano or not. You've got the gift
Yeah,
for
that's
it
true.
and the
Hmm.
music. And you obviously, it sounds like you love the kids that you're working with.
Yes,
So,
they
so
are
much,
amazing.
I bet that's so much more interesting than being in the human resources department in a cubicle next to somebody else. So I think that's awesome. So your mom and dad went with you or followed you?
I've I moved first, but it wasn't even a year later. I think they moved out here. Like I said, I was raised an only child, so they probably couldn't be too far from their baby, and they decided to come out here too.
Well, good for you. Good for them. Obviously, I'm sure they really need you. So, so you are working full time. You're
Hmm.
writing.
Hmm.
Um, you don't have children that you're dealing with, but still, a full time job takes up a lot of time. What does your writing
Yes.
day look like for you? Do you write every day, or do you put it on to days you're off, or how do you do
Yeah,
that?
I am not a good person as an example for those who say you have to write every day and set yourself a goal and everything. And I have done that sometimes when I am at work on a specific work. But otherwise, I kind of just fit it in where I can. I have a really great online critique group with other writers that I'm a part of.
Hmm.
And that kind of keeps me submitting as
Right.
well, where, because every week we'll be submitting things and looking at things for each other. But as far as having a daily goal, I don't usually do that.
Okay. So,
When I did have a daily goal, though, what I found worked better for me wasn't to um, set, I want to say it right. It's been a while. I'm sorry. Not to set an hour and then be sitting there with nothing to say kind of thing.
right.
Oh, I am going to make myself write an hour. It was better for me to set a word goal from
Yeah.
what I remember
Yeah.
and just be like, okay, if it only takes me 30 minutes, great, then you're done. But if it takes you 2 hours, then you have to do 2 hours. The word
Word
goal
goal.
works much better for me.
I'm a word goal kind of person too, but
Hmm.
generally my word goal is so high that I'm constantly, I'm full time. I'm
Yes.
probably 7 to 8 hours in the chair 4 days a
Wow.
week
Hmm.
time. So yeah, it's exhausting. It really is in a way, but it's a blessing. So you have the writing, and just curiosity, I ask everybody this: are you a morning person or a night person?
I like to say I'm an early riser because you think of morning person being good morning, and that is definitely not me. But I
But
am someone who it was probably around 5:35, 5:40 that I woke up this morning, and I didn't have to be up yet, but it's like, okay, might as well get up and get started. So I'm an early riser and I can be productive in the mornings. And I'm not a night owl staying up till 12 or 1 in the morning
yeah,
writing usually.
yeah, I hear you. I mean, I would say I'm a morning person, but I'm not that cheerful. But we are up at
Mm.
4:30 every morning. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I am definitely more productive in the morning than
Yes.
at night.
Hmm.
So you did do some indie publishing, and there are a lot of people out there doing indie now. And I'm
Yes.
curious, the challenges of indie publishing, the pitfalls of indie publishing, just because now you're going to be traditionally published.
Hmm.
But if there are people out there doing it, um, I can't even imagine trying to do that along with, you've got the marketing and all that comes with
Mm.
writing takes
Yes.
time. So indie publishing is just another task or several tasks on top of that. So tell us a little bit about how that played out for you, how you became an indie published author and what that looked like.
To me, it was worth it to do the indie publishing with others. Maybe they would want to hold off, but I feel like it was a God thing for me again. I was writing for this blog that talked about Korean dramas. And I'll give it a shout out, dramas with a side of kimchi, if anybody else likes dramas out there. And another woman that was writing for that blog, I think we were on a chat one night. I can't remember how it came about, but I think we were on a chat and I mentioned I was in Houston. She's like, Houston, you're in Houston. I'm in League City, which is, just down the road. And so she was maybe a 30-minute drive or so from me. And even though we had written for the same blog, we didn't know it.
Oh,
We were
funny.
able to get together. And her name is Jenny Bennett. She's amazing. She had already done the indie publishing thing and she wanted to do a My Korean Crush series and invited me to be a part of it. And that is what helped get me back into the writing groove because when I moved to Texas and started teaching, I put it on the back burner for a while and just didn't think too much about writing. But when she invited me, it helped reawaken my love for writing. Especially the thing I loved about indie publishing was I finally had somebody reading my stories besides just the editors and publishers that you were
Right.
submitting it to and sometimes rejecting. Now I actually was able to get readers' opinions and feedback and see, okay, they like this, okay, they don't like this. And I think it kind of helps cement in my mind my own style too,
Right.
because if they keep bringing up things they like, you're like, oh yeah, I do that a lot, don't I? And so it was a good self-discovery process for me. And even though indie publishing can hurt you when you're submitting to traditional publishers, so that may be one of the reasons why people want to consider it. seriously before they do it or not. For me, I think it was the right choice. I think that God led me to Jenny and that we worked well together, and she was a wonderful mentor showing me how to do it.
Awesome. Well, it's nice you had somebody walking alongside you for that too.
Mhm.
And it is so one of the pitfalls that you mentioned it to think about is that oftentimes if you really do want to traditionally publish, indie publishing kind of puts a blot on that to a lot
It's
of
true.
publishers. So think
Yes.
hard. And there are, for people that want to get published and they struggle with it, there are a lot of small publishing houses you don't have to have an agent for. I had an agent for 3 years and it did me no good because
Mm,
it just didn't. So you could
mm,
have, and it was a well-known agent. It
mm,
didn't make any difference.
mhm.
So when I pulled away from that, I kept hearing God say, "Let me be your agent." It's like, well, what does that mean?
Oh.
Am I supposed to self-publish? I really didn't want to. And a
Mhm,
friend of mine ended up talking me into submitting to Celebrate Lit, who I'm published with now.
mhm.
But they don't require you to have an agent because sometimes that's right there. There's your roadblock. You have a
Right.
good thing. Now you got to get an agent to first, and they need to make their money. So they want to make sure they're to get the most money for that. And then your publishing house has to make their money. And so
Right.
it's just, to me, it's, if, find a good group that will tell you the truth about your writing, learn the
Mhm,
craft, because I think that's a lot of people do not learn the craft. They just crank stuff out, indie publish. It's easy. I'm just going to put it out there. It won't matter. But
mhm.
if you're going to, if you really want to publish, I think learning the craft is essential.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yes.
so you've gone to writers conferences and you have a
Mhm.
critique group. What other things have you done to learn the craft of writing?
I had some great classes at Regent University when I was doing the journalism degree. That definitely helped. Just studying on your own, getting the books that help you. I believe one that's really good is the Save the Cat. Have you read
Yep. Oh
those?
yeah, I have
The
saved a
the
cat.
novel one.
Yeah.
Uh, so when I look through that one and just different ones that you can, I think being willing to try new things is really good as well. One thing I've discovered recently, I always shied away from reading first person novels, at
Uh,
least in recent years.
what I write.
No, no offense. I don't know why, but I would open up a book and be like, oh, first person, no, and I didn't want to read that. And then just recently, I read a great book, which was not only first person, it was first person present. It
Okay.
wasn't just I walk down the street, it is I am walking down the street. And I used to, oh, that was like the worst first person. But I read that book and it was so good.
What book
And
was that? I need to know now because I write in first person, and my first series was present tense. Now I write
mm,
first person past tense, but my first series was first person present.
well, you would probably really enjoy it being a writer too. It's by Melissa Ferguson, Meet Me in the Margins.
Okay, I'm gonna look
And
at
the
that.
heroine is I think she's an assistant editor in a publishing company, but she wants to write as well. And she has her own manuscript hidden at work, kind of thing. And she comes one day to where she's hidden it and she finds all these notes in the margins, by somebody who's corrected her and given her feedback. And she doesn't know who it is, but through the back and forth as she keeps leaving her manuscript and they keep leaving the comments, she starts to fall in love with whoever her secret
Nice.
editor is. But writers especially will get a kick out of it because it kind of has some inside jokes in
Right.
there. I love this one part where she's lamenting about how can I start a brand when I have nothing to sell yet? And she's trying to build
Exactly.
her platform. And you're like, yes, preach it, sister.
Well, and I think the problem too with first person, which the feedback I'm getting, because I just had my last book done an audiobook, and the audiobook narrator said, I've never done first person. I don't like first person. So I've
Mm-hmm.
never done it. And so I'm like, ooh, well, maybe you won't want to do it. Well, she said, I think what I've discovered after doing yours is that I didn't like it because they weren't writing it well.
Right.
Just
Mm-hmm.
because, there's a way to write it that isn't going to make it even feel like you're in first person. And I think that's
It's
critical.
true. You forget. You
Yeah,
forget.
you're just reading it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's really interesting. I do know, I think my top book that I would, because I struggle with structure. with
Mm.
making everything happen in the right place,
Mhm.
and making the conflict, is Story Engineering by Larry Brooks. I think that's probably one of the best
Ooh,
books
I
I've
should
ever
write that
read.
down.
It's
Larry
very,
Brooks, you say?
yep, Story Engineering. In fact, I just last year suggested that one of my critique partners use it because she was writing, beautiful writing. And,
Mhm.
but there was, we were getting halfway through a book and there was like no conflict, not no conflict, but it was like, what is your character's goal? Because I wasn't
I
seeing
hear
the
you.
goal. And so I was praying about it because I didn't want to offend her,
Mhm.
but it's like, so she just happened out of the blue, not long after that, to say, so Jennifer, what do you think my main character's goal is? And I said, I have no idea. Do you? And she's like, I think I need to rewrite. And so I told her, get the book, and she did, and she reformulated, because you have to have structure. You have to have those
Mhm.
goals. It can be beautiful writing, but if it's not going to go anywhere, you know, it's not going
Mhm.
to go anywhere. So yeah, there are some really good books out there, I think, that are phenomenal in helping with that craft of writing.
Mhm.
A lot of online conferences now that you can go to without having to travel to do it is a good
Yes.
idea.
Mhm.
Okay, so anything else that you want to leave us with, Shannon? Like
Uh,
final words of wisdom or encouragement?
I think one of the hardest things to deal with, not only as a writer, but also in life, anyone, is the waiting.
Oh
You
yeah,
have to wait to be accepted, wait to be published. Some people, if you're not writing, you might wait to get married, you might wait to get that perfect job. And when you know God, you don't have to wait alone. You just have to wait with God and trust that He has a plan and that there is a reason for the waiting. One of my favorite Bible characters is Joseph,
oh me
and
too.
he went through so much and had to wait for so long for those promises that God gave him when he was young. And I think God has those promises for each one of us. He
Mhm.
loves us and He cares about us. But when we don't see them right away, we've just had the dream like Joseph did, and we're already looking out the window looking for those promises
Right,
He gave us, and they're further down the road. And I'd just like to encourage everybody that don't stop looking out the window because those promises are coming, and keep on talking to God while you're doing it. Maybe sit in the window seat while you're sitting there, sit with God, and keep a watch out for those promises, and keep, if you're writing, improving your craft, keep
mhm,
making those stories that bring hope to other people, because you will see them when it's the right time. Just like with Joseph, he had to wait for the right time when Pharaoh was looking for somebody to interpret his dream.
right,
If you go back to that story, if he had gotten out of prison when he interpreted that dream for the cupbearer,
right,
what would he have done? That
right.
was 2 years before Pharaoh had the dream. So would he have worked his way back home to dad
Yeah,
and
maybe
then
just come
starved
down.
with them during the famine? It wasn't the right time. But because he waited 2 more years, he not only was elevated in Pharaoh's household, but he also saved his family and so
Exactly.
many nations because of
Right,
the
the whole
famine.
nation. Well, and let me just add something to that, because I did a lot of the waiting.
Mm-hmm.
From the time I started to the time, there's a reason that that God's having you wait. And I think 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, He's working on your character,
Mm,
because Joseph would not have been prepared to do what
yes,
he did had his character not been formed by all the stuff he went through and faithful and
absolutely.
showed. So that there's something happening in the waiting. It's not just you sitting there doing nothing. You
Mm-hmm.
do the next best thing and trust that He's got a plan, but you have to be listening and
Yes.
seeing the work that He's doing, because
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're always, I said that the whole point of us being here is being image bearers of Christ and
Mm-hmm.
growing in that every day. And
Absolutely.
that's in the waiting, we're always, He's always working on us. He doesn't just say, okay, wait there for 10 years, I'll be back. And
Right.
we'll move on then. He's going to work in that time, in that place right there. He's always working in the background. And that's what makes me so grateful. And it's so incredible to know that
Mm-hmm.
there's no wasted, nothing is wasted with Him.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, it has been such a pleasure, Shannon, to get to know you. I am so glad that you signed up to do this, and I can't wait to see your next book come out. I'll be looking for it. Make
Thank you
sure you
so much.
send me some information when that comes out, and let me know how it
Absolutely.
goes. I'd love to stay in contact. Let me know how it goes with your, the publisher's a big dark secret right now. I don't know who it is, but when it's official, you let me know. I'd be curious to know who that is.
Absolutely. I'd like to.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for having me. It was an honor.
And I hope you just have a blessed time. I will be praying for your mom for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
God bless you, and we'll catch up soon.
All right. Sounds good. Bye-bye.